Welcome back to Duckman Cycles of VW Garage. I'm your host, the Duckman. We're back today with my 1956 Volkswagen Beetle Oval. This is known as Eleanore, and she came to me as a completely destroyed car, which was completely submerged under seawater by Hurricane Ivan. And I mean, quite literally, there was 6 feet of seawater right over the roof of that car, and it was just completely flooded, and then left out to rot in the yard for the 10 years following, and I got the car after that and I started to put it back together, and as you see, it's a chop top. Reason why is, well, I couldn't get it back to original. It wasn't going to be original. Too much of the car was gone, and chopping up another original 1956 Oval to try to restore this one just wasn't an option to me. So I put it together best I could with the stuff that I had, and that's the car that you see today. But I pulled the body back off a couple days ago, as you saw, and underneath it I've got the chassis, which I slid underneath the body dolly that's in the garage there. And there's my fan. I've actually had that running. I've turned it off for you guys so you don't hear that constant hum of the fan, but the humidity is way up today. It's probably only about 90 degrees, but the humidity is so high, it is just disgusting. So we'll see how long I can run this video before my nuts start to stick to my leg and I get extremely uncomfortable. But anyway, this is the chassis. I've currently got the wheel pulled off of it. And the reason why is I'm trying to finalize the Porsche rear suspension arm fitment on the back of the Volkswagen pan. And this is an IRS pan. It is not original to the 56, and I wasn't going to use an original one. I wanted a car that was a good driver, and IRS is, well, the best driver. Also, when you lower it, you don't get all the stupid camber effects. I mean, it'll camber a little bit, but it won't camber as badly as a swing axle Beetle does. But the big advantage of the Porsche swing arm is that super offset that it has. Because we've put the super wide fenders on here, I needed to push the wheels out further to make them look right. Otherwise, they were extremely sucked in. The only other option, perhaps, is to go with some deep dish wheels, but then my tire width is just so wide, it's going to really hurt my gas mileage, and, well, bigger tires are much more expensive, too. I've got the swing arm currently pulled off, and the reason why is I had it on here, but I just kind of jammed everything together, just to give me an idea what my wheel offset was going to be and how it was going to look, and also just to finish a video. But the spring plate that you see here is actually from a Porsche 944. Rear trailing arm is actually also from a Porsche 944. So is that torsion bar that you see right here. And compared to a Beetle one, and I'll lay them next to them, but compared to a Beetle one, it's actually a much thicker diameter. And for a sports performance Beetle, having a rear engine, a bigger, thicker torsion bar is actually a good thing to have back there. And some buggies actually use bigger ones than that. But I think that's more than adequate for what we got here. And because it was a used part, it was actually cheap. And yes, it bolts right in. The spring plate bolts right in. Torsion bar will bolt right in. And the swing arm, or trailing arm, I keep intermixing those, and they're kind of the same thing. But yes, this will also bolt right on. The spring plate that you see here has a couple of adjustments in it. And this is the reason why I've installed this. This spring plate has an adjustment in it which actually allows you to adjust and release the preload on the torsion bars. To put it in layman's terms, it allows you to raise and lower the car. Now, Porsche's actually designed that so that way they can adjust the preload on the rear, one side or the other, and actually give you a little bit better of a handling advantage. Let's say you were making all left turns on a track. You know, that should be familiar to some of you American race fans. Anyways, it would allow you to adjust the preload on your outside wheels, so that way you could make it a lot stiffer so the car wouldn't wallow over in that direction on the outside of a turn. That's why they built it. It's really not meant to actually change your ride height, although that is what it does. And the second thing is, you see these 4 holes that are here on this end, on the outside, the forked end of it. These are your bolt holes, 1, 2, 3. The middle one, actually, you put in a special tool into that and allows you to adjust your toe in. So it allows you to pivot the wheel this way. And then this big slotted hole here, and I was making a mistake when I assembled this. I actually put in a standard bolt to hold it together. But standard bolts go in these 2 holes, and this one actually has a special bolt. It's actually cammed with a lobe on it. This is wrong, but the lobed one actually allows you to turn that, and it allows you to adjust the camber of your wheel. It allows you to adjust it by about 1.5 degrees in either direction, so depending upon which way you need to move that. Now, because we're lowering it, the wheel's going to turn this way. So I should be able to knock that back out and get that wheel to better, you know, look more straight, not as ridiculous as it might be, as a lower Beetle typically does. Now, this is an IRS rear end, and if you look at this wheel compared to the front, you'll see it's cambered. So that negative camber is actually going to be straightened out an awful lot by the adjustment that's allowed in the suspension. So this was a really good idea for me to to add this on here. And that's a big old benefit. It actually had the Porsche wheel pattern, which allowed me to put on my Porsche wheel. It also allowed me at the same time to upgrade my disc brakes. So I've got these big old discs that are on here with vented rotors. And some people complained, you know, all these things are going to be so much heavier, but I already proved in another video that they're not so much heavier as you might think. And in some cases, they're actually lighter than some of the Volkswagen aftermarket rear disc brake kits. So yeah, that certainly was a good idea for me to put these parts together on here. But one of the big problems that comes up, and this is the only real fitment issue, on the back side of this spring plate, there's 2 bolts that are here. And there goes my phone again, probably related to work. It never fails to go off when I try to record a video. But you can't just drop this spring plate right into here. What happens is it hits the shock tower. And when I jammed it all together, I mean, I literally just jammed it together, and you can see where it was rubbing here on the shock tower. So it didn't fit properly, and it has a bit of a clearance issue. So what I need to do over here is I need to actually cut a chunk out of this. Cut a box out and allow it to move freely in there. Now, because this has a piece that bends around this way 90 degrees to this surface, it goes in this way, I'm going to try to leave that, because I don't think that the bolt is going to interfere with all of it. So I'm just going to take a notch out of it, drop a piece out of this, and then around the backside, and the backside looks like this. What I'll do is I'll take a piece of plate and I'll weld it in this way to cover that up. And what that will do is it'll reinforce it. So for whatever I take away, I'm actually going to be adding new to the opposite side. So that will, you know, regain the strength. Now, I have read some articles about people that cut this out, and the thing ran for years without any problems. They didn't have any situations at all. But seeing as how I don't want to ever have to take this thing apart if this whole shock tower decides it's just going to break. And that's going to be a pain in the ass. So let's go ahead and do this right, and do it right the first time. And if I had my way, and I was, you know, a buggy designer or something, I would just entirely cut off the shock tower, and I would just use, you know, tube steel and build my own shock tower, and I'd reinforce it to the frame horns, I'd reinforce it over to here, and, you know, triangulate all these angles, also bring it back down to there, and just make it stronger than what it is. And, well, we'll see how I feel about it. I still might wind up doing that at this point, but yeah, we're probably not going to cut off the shock tower at this time. So let's go ahead and just cut this piece out and see what happens from there. The first thing you want to do is we're going to pack up this in here to stop all the shavings from going up inside of there. There is splines way up in the center of this car, and it'll be kind of hard for the shavings to get way up in there, but when you push in your torsion bar, those splines that you see right there, they're going to be a little bit greasy. That's what you're supposed to do, is grease them before you put them in. As you slide them in the tube, they're going to pick up all those shavings, and then, yeah, it's going to be a nasty gummy mess. So let's just keep the debris out of it, pack it up, get ready to cut. Now, if you look closely here, you'll see the line that I drew. I don't know if you can see it, maybe a little bit. And there's a line that I drew this way. That is the piece that I need to take out. And I'm surprised at just how thin this is, and this is a bad example because this is actually flared. But it's no more than about 1/8 of an inch thick, and no more at all. Just right here at this hole, it's actually a little bit flared out, so it's probably closer to 1/4 of an inch thick, but only right at the hole. Beyond that, it's not thicker at all. So we're going to take that out. There's a piece of webbing that runs down this way. I'm not going to cut the webbing out. We're going to leave that. I'm going to just take off this surface, so that way the vertical surface that you see here is gone. Alright, let's go ahead and start cutting them up. Well, I've been grinding, cutting away. Got a few interruptions. My phone kept ringing for business, as it always does. And as a result, we started to lose the sunlight. But anyway, here's where I knocked off at. You can see I took a big chunk out of here. I got a bunch of pieces like this. I thought they were about 1/8 of an inch thick. They look more like, oh geez, 1/4. They're not quite 1/4. It looked like they might be about, well, like 3/16. So it's a little thicker than 1/8 than I thought. This webbing through here was actually a lot thicker than I was thinking. That's, geez, a whole 1/4 of an inch, maybe even a little bit more than that. Up through here, this is looking good. I'm going to file this down a bit, and as you probably noticed, I receded it a little bit. I took out about 1/8 of an inch, taking the plate out, and then I ground into it a bit. So now, when I put the spring plate on here, the nuts aren't hitting anything, and of course this is all, the rubber is going to get all compressed in there and squeeze it in. But looking at it from the backside, that's what you'll see. So the nuts there are now free. They're not hitting anything. I'll smooth it out a little more, make it look a little better, and then of course this backside, I'm going to completely block it off. Put another plate on the backside here and just box it up. And like I said, I want to replace what I took away. So if I'm taking out that much strength from there, then I'm going to rebuild it on the other side, and adding that plate all the way up will probably be stronger than stock. At least that's what I'm thinking anyway, but I guess only time will tell. But if people are not breaking shock towers, and they're just like this, and you're leaving them hollow, and then I think reinforcing it should be just fine. I mean, I don't see any reason why that should break off. So anyways, here's where we're at. I'm going to start packing it in. The sun is starting to go down, as I said. So like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Please pluck that little dingle belly down there next to the subscribe button so you get updates every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out my Facebook page, Duckman Cycles VW Garage. Do a search right there on Facebook and join the group. You'll see this project and many others, maybe the Pook Moped. So if you got something you'd like to share, please join us up on Facebook, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time. Well, I decided to very quickly bolt on that spring plate just to see how well everything fit, and when I cranked them all down to the maximum tightness where it's supposed to be, the rubbers and everything got squeezed way too tight for me to actually move them by hand. I tried to put a pry bar on it, and I really couldn't get them to budge. But as it turns out, everything clears real nicely, except for on the very, very bottom down here. I didn't cut a 90-degree angle out of it. I kind of made it taper, so I'll have to cut it out a little more on the bottom. But it clears the full motion all the way to the top. So that shouldn't be a problem. Now right now I've got this loosened up, but I can lift that up. Boy, it's getting tired, it's getting late. What? Almost saw the duck man kill himself. Okay, lift that up all the way right there. It actually hits the bump stop on the inside, and back here you can see the nuts, or bolts, I should say, the bolt heads are completely free. They've got all freedom. They're not going to rub on anything where they're at. So that's good. Now the likelihood of these things seeing the absolute bottom down here isn't likely anyway, because, well, naturally it's going to be lowered. But what I will probably do, a lot of people use Z-bars, which essentially is a spring plate that raises these bolt holes up, and that will lower your car. But it allows the spring plate to naturally sit on the bump stop at the bottom like it's supposed to. This will give me enough adjustment here that I can probably compensate for that a bit and set this up so that way it sits closer to the bottom. So I'll bring this down to the bottom and then bring it up that way and dump it. And I think that might be good for it actually, because it'll give it more motion, you know, more range of motion, and that's important for suspension, particularly for a good ride, and especially if you're on a lower vehicle. So the first thing you lose when you lower your vehicle is your comfort of your ride. Over there on that side, you can actually see that it's sitting on the rubber bump stop right now. Now in the case of this side, there actually isn't going to be a rubber bump stop at all, unless I choose to do something over here. But the swing arm, the aluminum swing arm, actually doesn't have a bump stop on it. And if I cut a little bit of this out, it'll actually completely miss this, so I can probably lower it a little further even. But I don't need to dump the pan on the ground. I don't need to put the engine in the grass. And right where it sits right now is actually a little bit higher than how it's actually going to be sitting. It will be adjustable, however, but that's approximately where it's going to be at this height. And you can see that's pretty close to the ground, so, you know, watch out for raised manhole covers. Alright, well, there's the project. That's part one. Thanks you guys for watching.